Hey, everybody, and welcome to PPR podcast number 81. My name is Paul. The guy over there is the star of the show. His name is Bert. Bert, would you like to introduce our special guest?
Mr. Drew Westling, head coach of Mount Carmel High School.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, the reason why, at least at the start, besides the fact that you're friends of the show and been nothing but kind to us, is you have a clinic coming up. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I do. It's our second year at Mount Carmel. We did it 2 years, maybe 3 years at Hilltop when I was there. And you've been gracious enough every year we do it to let us promote it. So we're doing that this Saturday, 8 a.m. start. It'll go till 12:50. So we're going to have 3 speakers per hour on the hour for 5 hours. And we've got some great guys that we're looking forward to share some information. Can't wait to get it going.
I've noticed that coaches, I know you guys are the competitive breed out there, but when it comes to sharing X's and O's, you guys love to share that information, and that blows me away. Why is that?
I don't know. I'm sure a little bit of it for some coaches is to kind of show that they know football and to kind of feel their oats a little bit. And then, there's no patent on ideas. So from my perspective, it's just seeing what other people do and can we use that to help ourselves? It's interesting. Don Dumas, who's the basketball coach at Bonita Vista High School, he actually quote tweeted my tweet and said, we need to start doing this for basketball. And he thought basketball guys would be less giving of information than football. So it's funny you brought that up because who knows?
Yeah, so when you go in and you speak, you have to have some special sauce that you don't let anybody know. You can't give them everything, do you? How's that work?
Everybody's different. I give everybody everything. Just anything that I think can help them. Mike Leach, rest in peace, had a great quote where he talked about coaches who were afraid of, they would cover their mouth with their play sheet when they would call plays. And he had this whole rant, as he had so many rants about, I don't know why you're so worried that the defensive coordinator is going to know what your terminology is. He's going to somehow in 5 seconds get that information to the middle linebacker who's going to change the defense, who's going to tell 10 other guys exactly what to do because you know the play. I just think a lot of that's really overblown.
But it speaks to the coach's paranoia. The fact that they're like this, and it's not. Yes. It's now you see it at the high school level, and I just cracks. If anybody knew what your 48 BAM might be and what his 48 BAM might be, it's impossible that.
Well, hold on.
We're lucky if we can get everybody in the huddle that knows their names.
Who's your biggest rival?
Westview.
So Westview's DC is at this clinic, and he just comes to the offense just to watch you. You're going to sit there, and you're going to give everything. Your concepts, everything?
Well, it's kind of funny because Mitch, who's the head coach and calls the D, he's my buddy, so he won't be there. His daughter has volleyball. I actually asked him to speak. But you might hold something back if there's something you can hold back. I know Tristan McCoy's speaking, and even though he's not the head coach anymore, I'm going to be sitting right there in the front seeing if Weddle gives anything away. So, yeah, you're always going to try and learn and try and get an idea of what other people are doing. But, seriously, Bert, we run a no-huddle offense. If we do this, that means run the exact same play we just ran on the ball as fast as possible. The other team is calling out the play, but you don't have to necessarily always outsmart the other play caller. It's the 15-year-old kid who has a C- in geometry that you got to beat sometimes.
Yeah, and that was my point. If you're a coach or a DC and you can't watch film and get these concepts, then you probably shouldn't be a DC anyway.
Right. And so many times you can get caught trying to out-scheme someone or figure out what they're doing that you don't get better at just your everyday fundamentals. So, it's
and you're right. It's that kid. It's that 15-year-old, but nobody gets that translation because everybody watches the NFL, they play Madden, and it's like, oh, I can react immediately because these guys are getting $10 million to get paid to react immediately.
Right. I want to follow up. I have one more question on this topic, and then we'll get to other things. But I want to share with you guys, I've been to a couple of these clinics, and the thing that's burned in my memory banks is years ago, about 12, 13 years ago, I was at one in Orange County, and there was this wing T clinic. And I went where Ed Burke was there from Torrey Pines. And you got to figure that Ed Burke probably knows more about the wing T than just about anybody walking the planet. But he was in a small room. This guy from Ohio was talking about the wing T. And when the video ran of his team, it was obviously they were not an open division team from San Diego. They were Division 4, and they're a bunch of little kids running around. And I was Nobody was listening. Everybody was kind of talking amongst themselves. One guy sitting in the front row was taking notes, and that was Ed Burke. And I thought, wow, there are students of this game that he was just trying to find a kernel, maybe something he had never seen before, and he found it. And I thought maybe that's what it takes to be a winning coach.
No coach listens when wing T's being talked about by other coaches. Trust me.
Well, I would beg to differ because Ed Burke won a few football games running the wing T. I know
wing
it's
T
changed.
have like the secret handshake. You got to like do the thing. You cut the blood. The whole. I mean, wing T is kind of a different deal. It's
they have a Masonic lodge, I think, too. Wing T coaches. I'm pretty sure they do.
All right. Well, just lastly, because the thing it seems like everyone's doing. They all go up to the line of scrimmage. They get set, get in formation, then they, in unison, they all look over to the sideline and then look down at their watch and run the play. That seems to be the rage in the high school ranks and even at the collegiate ranks. Is that what you do?
Yes, and I'll be honest, and Noel Mazzoni, who was offensive coordinator at Arizona and UCLA, he and I kind of had a similar thought process on this. Sometimes when I don't know what to call, I'll call our freeze play, which is that, because then it gives me more time for them to call a play if they don't jump. So sometimes it's just, I don't know what to call, but I want to go fast and get up there and go from that. Our emphasis after looking at our offense last year is to try and get back to playing fast and not subbing and doing those types of things so much. But it really just depends year to year. And then what defense you're playing. Some defenses, you have a pretty good idea how they're going to line up. Sometimes you're just not in rhythm. You're out of rhythm. But I remember watching Manning when he was towards the end where you'd be like, dude, just snap the ball. We're tired of the whole song and dance here. But, we want to win, so whatever we think gives us the best chance to score, we're going to do that.
Are kids capable of taking in more? Back in 1978, I think our playbook read
Four
like
plays.
Yeah, we had like
2 to
12
each side.
plays, maybe 12 running plays, maybe 6 passing plays, 4 formations, and we still didn't get it right. And now the level of sophistication and has. Does it blow you away? I guess you spend more time on it because you're working out in spring, and then you got the 7-on-7. I assume you're running the same plays there, the same concepts.
You definitely have more time, and I think that's really the mark of all the coaches that I've admired that were really good teachers. They could make the so-called complicated easy, and then on the other hand, I've had coaches that made a bubble screen confusing. I'm like, God, I can't even throw a hitch. Some people can overcoach and over jargon things where you don't know what they're talking about. But the great coaches, Rocky Long was really good at this, where he would just say some really complicated blitz and he'd be like, look, just run right through this big fat guard right here. And there's people have an art to kind of the science of making it easy and understandable. And I think that's where some coaches can separate themselves as teachers.
Yeah, when you see a lot of that, it's like everybody wants to outsmart everybody else or be the next thing. You probably do it. You run 87 different motions and formations, just see where the defense is going to react early in the game. But does that confuse your offense at all? Because, again, these 15, 16-year-old kids, you just tell them just run here, and then see where they go, and don't worry about that.
So I tell a lot of the guys you're on a need-to-know basis. Like the linemen, you don't need to know what's going on behind.
That never changes.
One of the things that we started doing that really helped us a few years back, and I think it was SC when Sarkisian was doing this, and everybody's done it, but we have different signalers for different positions. So if we have a play that's like 8 words long, the lineman will just get the one word they need to know. And really, it's just one signal. So they're just looking right at their coach to get that signal because that's all they need to know. I remember in college with Al Borges, you'd have this West Coast offense play, and the lineman would just be tuning out till they heard 2-jet, 3-jet, 36, whatever it was. So we're always looking for different ways to be able to do a lot of different things and not confuse a million guys.
It helps to have a good quarterback, doesn't it? You seem to have
great.
one.
We've had great ones. I've been really blessed. Josh, who had a fantastic senior year, he was incredibly smart. Caden the year prior, all my guys at Hilltop, Luis Perez, Frank Foster at Southwestern. The quarterback does have to know everything for the most part.
So
it's your job as a coach to make sure you're doing what they do well. And if you had a stud guy who couldn't handle a lot, then don't do a lot, because it's not really about what you want to do as the coach. It's whatever's best for your guys, particularly the quarterback.
And that was going to be my next question. Do you prefer the smart guy or the athletic guy? I know you prefer both, but if you can only have one.
If you only have one, probably the smart guy. Probably my own sense of insecurities as an unathletic, smart backup quarterback. I always probably try and help that guy. So that's the guy I'm always rooting for, is the guy with the weak arm who can try and outsmart everyone. So our offense is probably about as quarterback friendly as possible because, somebody as low skilled as me could excel in it, I think.
So one more thing, I got to bring up the thing this morning on Good Morning San Diego. Paul's this habit of good-looking men putting up bad pictures of him, and Lauren commented that he's insecure because he put up the worst picture of you ever.
Which picture was it? You heard me before we started. I'm already not.
It was terrible, and she even made a comment coming off. Why are you so insecure when there's good-looking men? Let him have a good-looking picture.
For
reference.
No, to be honest, we're candid. We didn't know who our guest was going to be because you were slow off the uptake. So I put pick the graphic in charge. I put that in charge of Brandon Stone. So he's the
Brandon.
one. It wasn't your most flattering photo, but
it wasn't.
Let's just throw Brandon under the bus because he picked the photo.
Can I ask the question I'm dying to ask?
Go ahead.
Coach, I don't have to be Sherlock Holmes of social media. It looks like your DC might be getting a head coaching job somewhere in town. Is that?
Yes, that's. I'm not at liberty to say, but hopefully in a week or so, when they go through the process, he's a head coach somewhere. I'm really happy for him.
Well, who are we talking about?
Deontay Lee. He did our defense the last 2 years. Did a fantastic job. One of my closest friends. Consider him a brother, and he certainly earned the opportunity.
Where's he going?
And nobody knows. He hasn't told it yet.
We'll find out in a couple weeks. So
I tried to get it from Coach Heff. He wouldn't give it to me either.
What's open right now?
Good.
Has Oceanside got their coach?
No, Francis Parker doesn't have theirs. Vista probably has.
Do you know, Coach?
He knows.
I know where he's interviewing to be the head coach. I think he's got a great opportunity.
You don't want to tell
it's also in an area where he lives. I don't want to say anything if he doesn't want to say anything because he hasn't gone through the actual formal interview per se. So,
wait, he's resigning and he hasn't gone through the interview yet? You're lying now.
Well, he also
liar.
nice. So he's trying to figure it out. He lives way down south. Part of the problem is all my buddies who are kind enough to join me at Mount Carmel are South Bay, Spring Valley guys, and they're like, "Hey, man, I don't know if you've been watching the news the last year and a half, but gas is kind of expensive and it's been kind of a jaunt." So, but I'm excited for Deontay. I'm confident if the administration is as smart as they should be, then he'll be the next head coach at a great spot.
You bring up an interesting point because it seems like the coaches that are successful have this band of merry men followers that make up a great coaching staff. And while you're the Pied Piper, you attract a group that is loyal to you. Coach Jackson has a group that is loyal to him. Coach Joy. Every coach, successful coach, seems to have this great staff of loyal friends. Because let's face it, I mean, no one's getting rich doing this. They're doing it to compete, and they're doing it out of the love of the gig. But it's always that one guy that is attracting this group of people. You're that guy. Why is it that people want to be on your staff?
Well, particularly our staff, we don't meet on the weekends. So that's always my big pitch when we're looking for coaches. They go, "We got huddle. I don't want you to get a divorce. Go handle your business, take care of it on the weekend." So that's kind of my big sell to guys. But, we want to have fun. Felix Zavala, who's my O-line guy, my right-hand man, he was with me 3 years at Hilltop, was with me my 1 year at Chula. He's been here. He'll be his second year here. We just hit it off. We're best friends, and you don't have a lot of time when you're a teacher, coach, or work a job and a coach and you have a family. Like, these guys are your friends. So you're basically just coaching with people where you get your social time too and really have great camaraderie and a family. So you want to have as many guys with you as possible. And then when guys have other opportunities, you want to make sure you support them and help them achieve their dreams and their goals for sure.
Wait, so you didn't see Felix's Facebook post where he said, "Thanks for the opportunity, but I'm taking
I almost just to mess with people wanted to say, like, I've committed to having an egg McMuffin today, thanks." But I
respect my decision.
Exactly.
So let me ask you that, because I talked about Deontay Lee on PPR before. I mean, for me, one of the top 5 guys assistant to anywhere in the county that I'd hire. How do you replace somebody like that?
We're going to figure it out. So part of the interesting part when you have a coach who you think is going to end up being a head coach somewhere is you got to see, are other guys who are on our defensive staff going to go with him? So we're kind of in a little bit of a limbo. I've reached out to a couple people. I don't want to do what my mentor Ed Carberry did and what some coaches do, which is call the offense and the defense. I just don't think I have the mental fortitude, or I just think that would be really hard to do. So we're kind of working through this process to see where the chips fall, and then we'll just kind of see who's available. So much of it now is just where guys are geographically and what their family situation is. So every situation is different. Every year is different when you have openings, and just kind of reach out there and try and find the best guys that fit.
Oh, you want me to just keep asking questions? You taking the night off? What are you doing?
No, I'm not taking the night off. I'm just, I mean, can you speak to that a little bit, Coach? What's your advice to guys that are just getting into this business? It seems like It seems like back in my day, the coach was as much a part of the fabric of the school as the principal was. I mean, it was almost like the second most powerful person in the food chain at the school. Now, with so many off-campus coaches, and it seems like high school football has changed drastically, and not always to the benefits. It seems like we have this kind of free agency world now that coaches and players are just flying around left and right. Are we ever going to get that genie back in the bottle, I guess, is my question.
I don't know. Chris Four, who you had on, is fantastic. So Chris, in addition to the 8 Laces stuff, he writes resumes. So Chris did my resume when I started applying for jobs too, and we talked a little bit about that. And there's just not as many teacher coaches out there as there used to be. And I think the onus is a little bit on us as ambassadors of that group, and then administrators to try and entice people to do it. And Chris made some good points about all the issues of why people aren't sticking around as long as Blankenship and Gladden or Valley Center. Who am I thinking?
Gilster,
Gilster for as long time. So we've got to make sure that we make this an attractive opportunity for people. And, parents, I think, have to take on the role of not being a part of the problem and being part of the solution. So you don't end up in a situation where your kids down the line are being coached by a guy that you don't want them coaching them because all the other teacher coaches said, well, this is not worth the time and the issues that come with it. So we want to promote the game and get people excited. I will say Chris made a great point too. If you want to be a teacher, special education jobs are always in high demand. So I got my credential in PE and health before I added on special ed, and that just kind of limited my opportunities. So if you're a young coach who wants to be a teacher coach, I recommend special ed. It's incredibly rewarding. I'm doing it now. I have a child who has an IEP who's in that classroom environment, and I love it, and you're always going to have an opportunity.
That's good advice. But I want it, you said parents have to learn how not to be part of the problem. Man, that's easier said than done, is it not?
I think so. I think we have a great group of parents here. And I've been lucky. We had them at Hilltop too. I think what you have to do is, as a coach, you have to step back. And I had to do this because I take things personally, because I couldn't understand how some people would act, because I would never act that way. But you just have to understand they just want what's best for their kids, period, at the end of the day. And some people are advising them, these parents are just talking in their ear that are not giving them great advice. So I think if you just understand that you want to work with parents and invite them into the process, then that's a whole lot beneficial than shunning them, because then they're going to be influenced by people that don't know what they're talking about.
So you bring up, the parents want what's best for the kids. So I was going to call it the transfer portal, but it's not called the transfer portal, but unofficially that's what we call it now for high school. Because we do the games, and there's certain staffs you can look at and say, this quarterback from A team, if he was with this staff, he'd be probably getting 100 offers, but he's with this staff and he's getting none. Is it okay then to just jump around like that? I mean, should parents encourage that, or should they do their homework before who the staff actually is?
I think they should definitely do their homework. I think parents need to get away from the idea that the goal of high school sports is to get a scholarship, because it's still such a low percentage. And there's a right way and a wrong way to go about transferring too. I grew up in South Orange County. I went to middle school with Mark Sanchez, and in South Orange County, that's kind of where it started as the Wild Wild West in the early 2000s. Mark was at Santa Margarita High School and then went to Mission Viejo, but he kind of did it the right way per se. I think there's how you go about it a lot of times is important, and coaches need to understand that we're not helping ourselves when we get mad when parents move their kids. You got to just look yourself in the mirror and say, how can I provide a better program? And sometimes it's not a bad thing if a kid moves, because they might not be a great fit, even though they're a great player. So at the end of the day, it's what's best for the kids, and the kids in your program are your priority. And if a kid leaves, then you just wish them the best and say, what could we have done different? So it's really hard. But I've heard so many stories too, especially with quarterbacks, where a kid goes, and I've heard this multiple times, and he is at 4 high schools in 4 years. And what kind of high school experience is that? The kid maybe gets something out of it, but just because the dad wanted to live vicariously through this kid, it's just really sad, and they miss out on so much, and then they feel like a failure by the end of it. And it's like, man, this didn't have to be this way.
But we model, in high school anyway, we model everything off college and NFL, and we're seeing guys, it's the same thing. Who wants their college experience to be at 4 different colleges?
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing, or we're seeing the national championship quarterback is 48 years old last night. But he's two-time national championship. He didn't transfer. I mean, he went to JUCO back and forth, but he's 7 years in. I mean, if we're modeling that at the next level where all these kids want to be, why wouldn't they model in high school and do the exact same thing?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I don't want to be hypocritical either because I've transferred in college. I went to Tulsa out of high school as my only offer. I would have maybe played as a senior, but still probably not. The guys were better than me. And I said, I want to play. Everybody wants to play. And that's my message to my quarterbacks too, is I'm like, you want to go to where they want you because you want to play. So, I went to a JC and then I went to San Diego State and backed up Ryan. And I get that point of it. I mean, everybody wants to play. I think, you just got to be careful to not be one of those kids that goes in the portal and never comes out. I mean, that just scares me. So I don't know how this is going to shake out. I like a lot of aspects of the portal and the NIL. I think it's just going to take a couple years to kind of find the right thing for everybody. But, it gives them an opportunity because what was happening before with the randomness of waivers in the NCAA and the lack of transparency, I don't think that was better.
That's funny you said he backed up Ryan, because you backed up Ryan today, too, because it was supposed to be you next week and Ryan this week, and then he had to push it back, so you switched spots with him again.
So he does return texts, because I asked him to speak at the clinic, and I haven't even, he big timed me, so I don't know.
Well, he's probably under certain, so, when you're at that level.
Rarely, it's a 3 or 4 day, process just to get a response.
He has to get special approval.
Yeah.
Just before we leave the game last night, I thought my colleague here, Bert Grossman, said something very articulate. Watching that game, the national title game last night, he goes, Paul, you are seeing the difference between 5 stars and 3 stars. Could you expand on that, Drew?
The 3-star story, like the Stetson Bennett story, is an amazing story. But Chip Kelly was at a signing day thing a couple years ago, and I loved his quote. He goes, we can't just have 11 Rudys. He goes, you can't just have a 3-star who overachieves playing linebacker behind a 3-star nose guard. He goes, a lot of times biology is the ultimate scheme. And when you just have dudes, that makes everything a lot better. And what makes Georgia so good is they have great coaching, great resources, great support, great 5 stars. And Kirby's done a really good job of just being relentless. Because if you got a couple 5 stars, you can work around them. But when there's nowhere to hide and every one of those guys was the best dude in their area, it is hard to move the ball and hard to stop the ball from being moved.
And when you talk about the coaching, I mean, people overlook, Kirby Smart, just the decision and the vision to sniff out that fake punt against Ohio State. If that doesn't happen, Ohio State's in the national championship. But just, you're caught up in the moment and everything else, and you're the head coach and 1,000 things are going on, you still see that? Or somebody told him in the headset.
So what you're saying is Kirby Smart is smart?
Yeah. That play was the difference. Most people wouldn't have sniffed that out, but a first down, they would have went down and kicked a short field goal. But that was the difference. And obviously, he probably got it in the headset. I don't think Kirby saw it. But just those things, to be that aware in that moment is incredible.
No question. Yeah, I'm always impressed and love to watch those little moments in the game because high school, Pop Warner, NFL, college, most games are still lost and won. So it's, who can kind of make the fewest mistakes and catch those things. Those make the difference, especially when you have 2 really talented teams like Ohio State and Georgia, who ended up might be in the 2 best teams. Georgia was the best team by far, but it seems like Ohio State just had a bad day against Michigan. They were probably the 2nd best team.
Yeah, I argue that Ohio State actually beat Georgia. The referees beat Ohio State.
But is it flawed then? Do you think, because that's the big argument. I think TCU should still be there. They beat Michigan. They got donkey punched, but still. Should it have been Alabama? Should it have been somebody else?
Alabama would have played Georgia tougher than TCU did.
They would have.
I don't know. I guess we have one more year of this before it works itself out when they go to 12. Right. So it just becomes the argument of who's the 4 best and who's the 4 most deserving. And there's not really a description way to decide that right now. So we'll kind of make it one more year. And to be quite honest, I saw Georgia's schedule for next year. I don't think it matters. I think they're going to go 3 in a row. So
how
it'll be interesting.
Your coach, how does that work with somebody like Saban, who's been like the alpha forever, and then in his own conference, he's got to sit there and watch back-to-back, and then what do you think goes through his head?
Well, the only thing that I think will stop Georgia next year is Alabama, because I don't know if you saw the clip, but David Pollock, they had Saban on their panel, and David Pollock, who's a Georgia guy, goes, well, I just can't believe how Georgia's taken over college football, and they look at Saban, and he's got like smoke coming out of his ears. So that they might have lit a bomb where he goes, maybe I'm not retiring anytime soon. I'm going to go get this thing right, let him know who the top dog is. So, it'll be fun. But the SEC, it's a different level of commitment to football, with different types of athletes. They are the real deal.
Hey, before we let you go, Drew, a couple questions. First of all, we were going back to the high school transfer portal. What is the 7-on-7's role in all that?
I don't know. I think, again, I bring up the Bob Johnson Mission Viejo thing with Mark Sanchez. It was so funny because Mission Viejo, the way they used to get kids in was they had an agricultural program. So that was how you could transfer without sitting out. So you had all these 6'3" guys who benched 350 who wanted to be farmers all of a sudden going over there. So
Orange
there's
County
some coaches.
farmers,
Yeah, exactly, right? There's some guys in 7-on who I almost respect more, who are just blatantly like, hey, you should come play for my team, because at least they're not pretending that they're not doing it. And it's leading to high school things. I think as coaches, we have so many things we have no control over, that worrying about different things. Like, we're worried about right now the divisions. Southern section does no divisions till playoffs. So as coaches, we've been talking, hey, what are we going to do? And at the end of the day, it's going to be voted on by people who are a pay grade ahead of us. So I go, well, who cares, guys? Let's just kind of let it work out. So we do 7-on-7 for our own team and use it as a tool. I mean, we throw the ball a lot. So I try not to get worried about it. Kids play on other teams that are on our school. This year, we have most of our kids playing for high intensity, where JT Telmoy-Payao, who coaches with us, runs. So if you kind of have a club team and they play all together, I think that's good because they can work on their skills. But I'm not opposed to a kid if he wants to do something else, and whatever, it's all good.
Well, then can we wrap this up then with your advice to young coaches who are maybe at the youth level wanting to get to the high school level, or maybe assistants?
Come to the clinic.
Well, besides coming to, all right, plug your clinic one more time then.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Grossman. Come to the clinic. This is not just for high school coaches. You don't even have to coach. You could just be somebody who wants to learn a game and come on out. But it's going to be Saturday. We're kind of have an offensive guy, defensive guy, specialty guy going each hour, so you'll be able to pick your poison. But it'd also be a great chance to network. I mean, people don't know that you want to be a coach if you don't tell them you want to be a coach. One of the cool things I think I've seen on social media with all of the harms that come with it is people will just be like, I'm Bill Smith. I would like to coach college football. Here's my resume. And then I see them 6 months down the line and they're like a GA at some D3 in Iowa. So people don't know that you want to do something if you don't let it be known. So if you want to coach, I guarantee you there are coaches that would love to have you on some role on their staff, because we're always looking for quality guys. So just get out there and go ask your local coach, how can I help?
What's the best piece of advice last question, best piece of advice you've ever received?
Ed Carberry told me, give your wife foot rubs and listen twice a week, and that'll help you from having marital problems caused by being the head football coach. That's what he did.
You still do
40
that?
years. I don't know. This is on YouTube. I don't know if my wife's gonna find this, but I need to do it more if she somehow comes across. So yeah, but
That's
take
a
care
no.
of yourself, take care of your family, you'll be good. It is a no. I gotta do it more.
All right.
Drew, thank you so much. We went 28 minutes, 27:53. Coach, I got to run to a meeting, so I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This podcast has now concluded. Turn off the machines.
Thank you, Drew.